today's video, we're going to go through an updated list of great drops for lower level players. These are going to be some high value rewards or decently value rewards that you can chase after when you're just getting into PVM. You don't have tons of gear, your bank value is not worth hundreds of millions or billions of gold, but you're looking for that next upgrade and these items are going to help you out along the way. You don't need tons of requirements to do this. In fact, you can probably pull off all of these bosses in like level 70 necromancy gear. So in the background, you will see me killing those with level 70 necromancy gear, but of course I cannot lower my account stats, so I do have like 99s and everything, but I will not be using a familiar and I will not be using any prayers except for protection prayers. Of course, if you have those, you should use them, but let's go through these bosses, shall we? The first boss or bosses or PVM and encounter, I guess, is going to be the Barrows Brothers. Now, the Barrows Brothers is insanely old content. However, this place is still pretty decent for a lower level player with not much GP looking to actually make a decent amount of money. Not to mention that this place is insanely easy to do. You're going to want maybe protection prayers, but that's about it in terms of difficulty. And all you're going to need to do here is head to each hill that you can see my character heading to on screen, dig into the caverns, and then open up the actual tombs. You're going to find one of the tombs in here that leads into the tunnels. If you get this straight away, just head out and go to the other ones and remember which one you actually came to. And then when you go into the other ones, whenever you click on the actual like coffins in the middle, you'll actually get a fight with one of the Barrows Brothers. Once you've killed these, you'll unlock their loot table in the final room. It's worth mentioning that you'll need to complete Ritual of the Majorant or Kindred Spirits to unlock extra members of the group, but you don't need to do this to actually get like tons of value out of the boss anyway. If you haven't done this, don't worry, it's not a big deal. This place is still absolutely worth it. And then once you've done as many of the bosses as you can out here, you head to the tunnel that was open and allows you inside. Now once you are inside, you're going to be in a bit of a maze and you have to head to the center of the maze to open the final chest to get your loot. During your run to the middle, you may encounter the last Barrows brother that you haven't actually killed because his chamber was open to get inside. But if you don't, then when you reach the chest and open it, it will be spawned and you can kill that guy and then loot your chest to get as much chance of a reward as you can. Now, killing the creatures while you run from the start of the tunnels to the middle does increase the amount of like trash loot or common loot that you can get, but I would suggest just not bothering with that and just running directly to the middle and focusing on killing the Barrows Brothers, opening the chests and resetting, because the trash loot just really isn't going to be worth your time. The value from here is going to come from opening as many chests as possible after killing all of the brothers that you can. As for the expensive rewards that you can actually look to get from here though, include the Amulet of the Forsaken, which is around about 15 million GP as of right now, between 13 and 15 mil, which is pretty damn good. And the Aram's Staff is the actual pricey one, sitting at around about 20 mil. And I checked these prices myself, so they are accurate right now as this is my Grand Exchange history. However, do expect these to jump around a bit. It's also worth mentioning the other items that are worthwhile here as well. For example, most of the actual weapons themselves are pretty damn pricey, and there's some armor pieces that are around about 3 to 4 million GP too. So for someone who has very little to put into PVM in terms of money and stuff, you can definitely get a decent amount out of this. Okay, now we're moving on to some of the more juicy drops for the easier bosses to kill. The first one we're going to talk about is going to be Vindicta. Vindicta has always been on this list whenever I've made it in the past, and it's still here because it's still holding its value. And I believe the reason it holds its value is for Invention. Invention being added to the game came with perks for gear, and the best in slot perks right now still and always have included the actual components that you need to get from the drops of Vindicta. The Dragon Rider Lance and the Crest of Zaros are in high demand because of these components, and I can't imagine this will change for the foreseeable future. Not only does Vindicta come with some pretty juicy drops, it also is a great place to start improving your PVM abilities. It helps you in using defense abilities, which you definitely should be using here. You should be looking at using things like Resonance, Reflect, and Devotion in these places, along with positioning things like Surge, Bladed Dive, or Regular Dive. If you don't have Dive or Regular Dive, just focus on Surge. It's going to teach you a lot about PVM, and it's also going to get you into things like changing your prayers at the right time. And while this might sound difficult at first, it is something that is absolutely 100% worth your time investing in, and it's not going to be overly punishing for you to do so. And once you do practice this a little bit and get into the rotation and the swing of this boss, you will be rewarded very nicely. For example, the Dragon Rider Lance is sitting at around about 25 million GP, as is the Crest of Zaros, around about 22 at the moment. Now, while these aren't insanely game-changing drops, if you are starting PVM with tier 70 Necromancer gear, your GP value of gear right now is actually very low. So getting 25 mil in one drop actually is pretty huge. You can use that to upgrade your prayer, to get a different like weapon upgrade, even though I'd just suggest going to tier 90 necromancy from this point, maybe investing it into summoning during double XP, or many other things as well. Getting yourself a new amulet, new ring, all these sort of things are going to be important, and it is going to add up over time. 25 million GP at the point of only having tier 70-ish necromancy gear is pretty damn big. But Vindicta doesn't just come with GP rewards. Honestly, this place is insanely good for learning PVM and shouldn't be overlooked at all. Very quick mention that there is actually a ton of you guys that watch all the videos consistently but haven't clicked the subscribe button yet. It helps the channel out a ton if you do, so please do check if you are subbed. It is very much appreciated. Next up, we're going to cover the God Wars Dungeon 1 bosses. We have Kree and Krill, or Kriara and Zami. Well, not Zami, but no one can pronounce this, so we'll just say the Zamorak General, Krill. These bosses don't drop anything insanely expensive, unfortunately. However, they are very easy to kill and require very little amount of gear, and they also drop armor pieces that are worth between 4 to 5 million GP. So I did think these were worth a decent amount of mention here, just because I don't know how low we're expecting to go in this list. But these are definitely something you can AFK if you have the actual required stuff. But if you don't, you can still come here, take them on actively, which could be fun at that point of the game. If that's like where you're at, that's still going to be a decent boss encounter and quite fun for a while, and still expect to get a few decent drops maybe in an hour or two. Getting any of the armor pieces from the Armadyl armor or the subjugation armor is definitely going to be a decent boost to GP if you are in a very early on position to make a bit of gold. Not going to spend much longer on this though, because there's not really much more to talk about. For those of you that have seen the past videos of these, like a couple of years ago, whenever they were made, you could probably guess what this is going to be. And that's going to be the Arc Glacier. This may come as no shock to those people who have seen that video, but for those of you that are new to RuneScape or returning to RuneScape, the Arc Glacier in normal mode is super easy to do. Super easy. It's actually also zero punishment because all the deaths here are safe in normal mode. So if you die, you just teleport outside and you can go straight back in. There's no death costs. It's the great place to start. But the Arc Glacier in normal mode, I am specifically talking about with all mechanics enabled. You have to have all of them enabled to get all of the actual decent drops here. The drops you are going to be chasing include the Scripture of When, which is the most valuable thing on this list at around about 40 million GP. I believe slightly over that, which is huge, by the way, for someone who is using tier 70 necromancy gear. But also, actually pretty decent on the list, is the Leng artifact. Now, the Leng artifact itself has really no value. You can't sell it straight away. You actually have to use it to craft something else. But to upgrade the Carapac wrist wraps, which are insanely cheap at like 1 million GP, you can upgrade that with the Leng artifact to make a profit of around about 20 million GP-ish, maybe 22, 23. I insta-bought and sold some of these gloves at 27 mil and 25 mil. So upgrading your regular Carapac wrist wraps gives a very good value to the Leng artifact. So being able to chase the Scripture of When and the Leng artifact in normal mode is actually pretty damn good. But the Arc Glacier has a lot of other value as well. One, the trash loots are actually pretty good, and honestly, you're going to make a decent amount of money here. It's really good. But this boss is by far the #1 winner, in my opinion, for teaching players to move on to different bosses. This boss is insanely good. All of the different mechanics here go across to pretty much all the other bosses in the game until you get to like super endgame stuff. You have mechanics that require you to pray afflict, but you don't get insanely punished for getting it wrong. They have mechanics that require you to use specific defenses as well to make sure you don't get one hit, but again, it's not the end of the world. It's really easy to do. You're going to use like resonance to make sure you don't get killed by it, or devotion with magic prayer, or reflect. Loads of options, basically. It's going to teach you about positioning and making sure you can dodge mechanics that are like pillars of ice chasing you around the floor, which is incredibly valuable as well. But not only that, in my opinion, the most valuable thing that the Arc Glacier teaches you is not any of these mechanics specifically, but to recognize and sort of anticipate mechanics that are coming along. There is a pattern with the icicles that teaches you what mechanic is about to happen, and recognizing these teaches you to keep an eye out for specific like animations or cues from the game to tell you, hey, this mechanic is about to happen, get ready to deal with it, and then pull that information from your memory to remember how exactly you're going to do this. The Arc Glacier is a gateway to making a ton more money at different bosses, so once you get this boss down, then you can start taking a step up and moving along the way. But like I say, 40 million GP plus from the Scripture of When, along with decent trash loot, but also the Leng artifact is an option as well. These are going to make a great addition to your bank value, so good luck on getting them, and hopefully you do. Our next destination is going to take us just across the way to Hellware. Hellware actually is also pretty damn useful in terms of learning PVM. However, we don't need to spend as long here talking about it because it's the same sort of stuff. That being said, the abilities that you're going to be practicing here include Resonance again, but also include using Freedom, maybe Anticipate, Devotion at the right time again as well, and Surging to move out of different places. And then also making use of Area of Effect abilities to clear off the additional wolves that Hellware does spawn. Another boss that is super useful in terms of improving your PVM abilities, but I would suggest coming here after Vindicta because it's gonna be like the next step in the line, and this is slightly more punishing than Vindicta. What exactly are the drops that are going to be bringing you to this boss? Well, the Wand and Orb and the Crest here are insanely valuable. They are around 25 million GP each again, just like at Vindicta, but having 3 drops on the table just improves your odds just a little bit more, meaning that once you do get a drop here, you have a higher chance that the drop that you do get is actually going to be valuable. The reason these drops are still valuable today again goes for the same reason as Vindicta: Invention. Invention has been great at keeping certain bosses relevant for the older times as well, and not just letting them die off. The perks here are used for things like Planted Feet and some other decent perks too, so they will always have value. So Hellware is absolutely another boss that is worth learning and chasing drops at because, one, like I said, it's going to be good at improving your PVM skills, but also 25 mil if you only have like a 20 mil bank is pretty damn impressive. Going to be a big game changer, definitely worth the time. Rather than doing an outro for this video, I thought I would end it with some honorable mentions because there's some other bosses that are worth chasing, but I wanted to focus this on specifically using Necromancy, right? So without Necromancy, you could look at things like the Dagonoth Kings or the Rex Matriarchs, because these bosses still have very valuable drops. The Dagonoth Kings a little bit less, but are still good money per hour in terms of getting all the rings from there. But also the Rex Matriarchs do have a couple of the hearts from those that are in very decently high value GP drops. Not to mention Osseous is actually damn good for GP as well for the like mid-level players. The reason I didn't include these was because of the fact that, one, all of the other ones except for Osseous cannot be done with Necromancy, so you would have to have the relative combat style, magic, melee, or ranged, to take these bosses on. But also I don't think these are necessarily easy, like easy. They're easy bosses. For example, I could go in and blow them up in 2 seconds, it's not a big deal. But for someone who is going there with 10 to 20 million GP of gear, and they don't have like the high level ancient curses, they don't have super expensive like you know what I mean, like the abilities and stuff all unlocked, these aren't going to be the easiest things to actually like grind out. But if you can take on the bosses, for example Osseous, these are worth looking at and getting into as well. Hopefully that helped you guys out. If it did, leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and I will catch you all in the next one. See you later guys, bye.